Doing Masechet Berakhot, Daf Lamed Gimel, no, Daf Lamed Bet Amud Bet. That's 32b. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Gdolat Tefila Yoter Mimasim Tovim. Rabbi Elazar says that prayer is greater than good deeds. She'en lecha gadol b'masim tovim yoter Moshe Rabbeinu. Because there's no one greater in good deeds than Moses. Moses was doing good deeds all the time. And lo na'ana ela b'tfilah shneimar el al tosef daber elai. But even though Moshe did all these good deeds, he was only answered through prayer. As it is written, don't speak to me any more further on this matter. In the 3rd chapter of Deuteronomy. And how was Moses answered? He was answered in the sense that he wanted to enter the land of Israel. He was not allowed to enter the land of Israel, but he only did what God told him to do, and he was allowed to go up to the mountain and look at the land of Israel. So, in a limited sense, his prayer was answered. So, I think the Tosfos explains that it was more that Moses had a lot of good deeds, but when he wanted to enter the land, he used prayer, and he didn't do. Some people they want something from God, so they do things. They help the poor, and they give, and they help orphans and widows, and work in soup kitchens and that kind of thing. Because why? Because they want something from God. Either they want to honor the honor of being a good person, being a do-gooder, or not just honor, but they get satisfaction. They want this feeling of satisfaction, or perhaps they want merit, and they say I want a good life. I want the good life, so I need merit in order to have the good life. Sometimes people, if someone close to them is sick, or they themselves are sick, they will increase their good actions. Say, I'll be better, I'll do good things, and then I'll get something, I'll be well. Or somebody could say, I want to go to heaven. So I'll do good deeds, and then I'll get something, I'll go to heaven. And that's one explanation of when Moses, he didn't do that. He said he wanted to go into the land. All Moses wanted to do was go into the land to do the mitzvot, to fulfill the commandments that can only be fulfilled in the land of Israel. And Moses wasn't allowed to enter the land of Israel. So he said, I'm going to go help all the widows and all the orphans, and be nice to all the widows and orphans, and work in the soup kitchen. No, he could have done that. He probably did a lot of that. They say that no one was greater in good deeds than Moses. But what did he do? He prayed. V'samichle Alelu Rosh Piska. So, in other words, that's the proof. He could have prayed. He could have done good deeds, but he prayed. And then right after God said, "Stop praying," God said, "You prayed, thank you. Now I'm going to let you go up to the mountain." Amar Rabbi Elazar Gedola Ta'anit Yoter Mi'etzraka. Rabbi Elazar says that fasting is greater than giving charity. My tama, why is that? The fasting is greater because you do it with your very body, and tzedakah is less great because it's just your money. It's not your very body. You're giving your money for a mitzvah. You're doing good things with your money, but your body, you are not willing to sacrifice your very body. So, and it's kind of not sacrifice, human sacrifice, the way that it's permitted by, but the fasting is very important on Yom Kippur and on the 9th of Av, and there's 4 other days in the year. There's 6 days that a Jew is required to fast throughout the whole year, and these 2 of them are 24-hour fasts without eating or drinking, unless of course somebody is sick and or unable to fast. The doctor says they can't fast. And then there are 4 other days when we're fasting just from before sunrise until after sunset, during the daylight hours. And other than that, a person doesn't need to add any extra fasts. He doesn't have to do that unless very limited cases that would a person take on other fasts. And our generations, we're a weak generation. Our body is weak. And I'm not saying that the Gemara is wrong. I'm just suggesting, God forbid, everything in the Gemara is true and correct. But not everything in the Talmud is exactly appropriate for our generation. So, in terms of action, so we don't have to fast the way previous generations may have had to fast. For certain individuals may find benefits from fasting, but don't consider yourself one of them unless you consult with a responsible advisor and mentor. So Amar Rabbi Elazar Gedola Tefila Yoter Min HaKavanot Shenamar Lama Li Rov Zivchechem Uketiv Uva Farsechem Kapechem. So Rabbi Elazar says prayer is greater than sacrifices. As it is stated, to what purpose is this multitude of your sacrifices to me? In Isaiah, the first chapter of Isaiah, I don't want your phony sacrifices. It says in the beginning of Isaiah. What good are all these sacrifices if you keep sinning? Some people they're very religious and they're doing mitzvot all the time. They're davening all the time, but they're still doing sins. And they say, "Oh, at least I'm davening." Doesn't add up. It's not their mitzvot are not transforming their behavior. So, but here, so we're proving that prayer is greater than sacrifices. So God says, "Why do you give me all these sacrifices?" And then right after, and several verses later, He says, "And when you spread forth your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. And even if you increase your prayer, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood." Not only Israel's sacrifices, but even their prayers, which are on a high spiritual level, will not be accepted. So why is prayer greater than sacrifice? The sacrifices is Lama li rov zivchechem. Why are you giving all these carbonot? I'm not. God says you're giving carbonot, but I'm not appreciating your gifts. God said, and then afterwards it says uvafarsechem kapechem. But when you pray. But the problem is, you would think to say, but the verse would say something like, but when you pray, I will accept them. I won't accept your sacrifices, but I will accept your prayers. No, but in Isaiah 15, it doesn't say that. So how is this justified? Rashi says, if prayer was not greater, then since He said, what do I want all these sacrifices? What good are all your sacrifices? If prayer was not greater, then since God said, what good are all your sacrifices? Why would He go on and mention prayer? You don't even your sacrifice. Why go on if if God doesn't want the sacrifices? Then what good is prayer going to do? It doesn't prove that prayer is greater than sacrifice. I think Rashi is suggesting that because he even mentioned prayer afterwards, it must mean that there is a chance for prayer. But that's not what the verse says. This statement of Rabbi Elazar is a mystery. I cannot figure it out. I need somebody to explain it to me. Next, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Kohen sheharag et hanefesh lo yisad kapav, shneimar yidechem damim aleu. Rabbi Yochanan says that a Kohen who killed is not allowed to give the priestly blessings, raising his hands in the synagogue, which is practiced today in the land of Israel among all communities, and outside of Israel among the Sephardic communities. But if a Kohen had killed somebody, he's forbidden from giving the priestly blessings. Why? It's again because we mentioned verses from Isaiah. He's saying your hands are filled with blood, and the rabbis say that verse, the hand is filled with blood, is not. If somebody's hands are filled with blood, they don't have the power to bless. The three verses of blessings in Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26, are the priestly blessings. It's recited between the blessings of thanksgiving and peace. So it's supposed to be given in a spirit of love. It's to bless. The priest blesses to bless. Blessed are you, God, who commanded us to bless Israel with love. So how is it possible to bless with love the same hands that have taken life and killed? So that the rabbi said that a Kohen who killed cannot perform the priestly blessing in the synagogue. Whether or not he, of course, privately, could, but he might be reluctant to, knowing this law. So you could say with his mouth, I bless you with good things. But just to perform the ritual, no, not allowed. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Kohen sheharag et hanefesh lo yisa kapav. I read that. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Miyom shecharav Beit HaMikdash, Nin alu sharei tfilah. Rabbi Elazar said, from the day that the temple was destroyed, the gates of prayer were closed. As it is written, Gam ki ezak v'asheveh shatam tfilati. Even when they cry out, I've closed their prayer. Afalpi shesharei tfilah ninolu, sharei dima lo ninolu. So, even though the gates of prayer were closed, the gates of tears were not closed. Shenemar shimat tfilati Hashem v'shavati hazina el dimati al techarash. It says in the Psalms, God, hear my prayer and my crying, and do not be silent to my tears. And so David HaMelech knew. David HaMelech was an expert davener, an expert in praying. The greatest prayers ever in the world were coming from King David. And in the book of Psalms, it says that the tears are effective in influencing God through prayer. God responds to tears. He may not respond to prayer. He always hears prayer. On another level, we know that God always answers prayers. He just doesn't answer the way we want Him to, and we don't know where or when He will answer. It's compared. Rabbi Mordechai Sheinberger, Shlita of the old city of Jerusalem, once described it as planting a seed. When you plant a seed for a tree, you're going to plant the seed in the ground, and you're going to know that should it be a successful tree, if it grows, it's going to grow right where you planted the seed. However, prayer, you're also planting a seed. Rabbi Sheinberger said, when you pray, you plant the seed through the words of your mouth. The words are like seeds, right? And the prayer is like a seed. And it takes root and grows, but you don't know where or when. Or how. So Another thing about on this, the gates of prayer were closed, but the gates of tears are never closed. So Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sasov, one of the great masters of all time, Moshe Leib Sasover said that joy is more powerful than tears. How do we know? We know that it says that the gates, the way the Gemara says right here is that the gates of prayer are closed, but the gates of tears are not closed. So tears, they need an open, the prayer, to get the request in, the tears open the gates. Why is simcha greater than tears or sorrow? Simcha, joy, is greater than tears because simcha doesn't need, the tears have to open the gate. But simcha goes right through a closed gate. That's Rav Moshe Leib Sasso. Rava lo gazar ta'anita biyoma de'eva mishum shene'amar sakosa ve'anam lach me'avor tefillah. Rava, with regard to locking the gates of prayer, Rava did not decree a fast on a cloudy day. Yoma de'eva. Not on a cloudy day because it stated, you have covered yourself in a cloud through which prayer cannot pass. Sakosa ve'anam lach me'avor tefillah. Rav Chai Gaon says on this that the verse indicates that clouds are a bad omen, indicating that God has averted His face. Amar Rabbi Elazar, b'yom shechar Beit HaMikdash nifsaka chomat barzel ben Yisrael avicham shebeshmayim, shenemar v'takach machavat barzel v'natata ota kir barzel bencha uven ha'ir. Rabbi Elazar says, since the days of the temple were destroyed, an iron wall separates Israel from our Father in heaven, as it is stated in the prophet Ezekiel, and take for yourself an iron griddle, an iron griddle, and set it as an iron wall between yourself and the city. It will be a sign for the house of Israel. So, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Kol americh b'tfilato en tfilato chozer v'kam. Rabbi Chanin said, anyone who prolongs his prayer is assured that his prayer does not return unanswered. It'll be accepted. From where do we derive this? Manalan. Mimoshe Rabbeinu shenemar ve'etpalel el Hashem nu kativ batre vayishma Hashem elai gam b'fam hahi. So, we learn this from Moshe. As it stated, Moshe said, I fell down before the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights, and the 40 nights I fell down, and I prayed to Hashem. It says in Deuteronomy 9. And it's written right after that, and the Lord heard me that time as well. So, because Moses was persistent and prayed for a whole 40 days, his prayer was heard. Yini, is that so? The Gemara questions this. Vaha amar bichia baraba amar Rabbi Yochanan kol hamarich b'tfilato u'ma'ayen ba sof ba lidei ke'ev lev shneamar tochelet memushacha machala lev. The question is, there's something contradicts. Didn't Rabbi Chia bar Abba say something to contradict this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan? Anyone who prolongs his prayer and expects it to be answered ultimately comes to heartache. Like the pasuk says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. What's the corrective? To study Torah. As it is written, Ve'etz chayim ta'ava va'a. Another verse in Proverbs says, desire fulfilled is the tree of life. What does this have to do with Talmud Torah? Study? Torah study? Ein etz chayim ela Torah. Etz chayim is the Torah, as we know from the Talmud and from the Kabbalists. And how do we know this? From the verse. Etz chayim hi lo machazikim ba. It's a tree of life for those who hold on to it. In this, you look in the Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 18, and the whole discussion is talking about Torah. Lo kasha. So it's not a contradiction. So we're saying that one says, Rabbi Chanina said that if you're persistent and you prolong your prayer will be answered. And Rabbi Yochanan said if you prolong your prayer, you're going to have heartache. So what's so the corrective, the remedy for the heartache is Torah study. Eitz Chaim l'machazikim ba. So, but really there's no contradiction. The Gemara resolves it by saying, Ha demarich u'mayen ba, ha demarich v'lo mayen ba. The solution is that Rabbi Chanina refers to Rabbi Chia Bar Abba is talking about somebody who says that prolonging prayer will break one's heart. Not break one's heart. That's another term. We use that a different way. Heartache, meaning it'll be difficult for him. It's not going to be successful. He's going to be let down. So Rabbi Chia Bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan says you're going to be let down. He's talking about somebody who prolongs his prayer and he expects it to be answered. When you prolong your prayer and you have expectations from God, like I decide, I pray, God forbid one says, I'm a tzaddik and I'm gonna decree and God's gonna answer and that's that. And if he's not, okay, who's a tzaddik? So it's being stubborn with God and being boastful, a trifle arrogant, saying I'm going to prolong my prayer and I'm expecting you to do what I say. What is that? Rabbi Chanin, who said that one who prolongs his prayer is praiseworthy, that's referring to somebody who prolongs his prayer and he doesn't expect God to answer. On a similar note, Amar Rabbi Chama Rabbi Chanina, Im ra'a Adam shitpalel v'lo na'ana yachzor v'yitpalel. Shneimar kavel Hashem chazak v'mezbecha b'kavel Hashem. Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina says that if your prayer wasn't answered, then you pray again. Like it says in Psalm 27, hope in the Lord, strengthen yourself, let your heart take courage, and hope in the Lord. Because it says hope in the Lord twice, it's hope in the Lord, and you didn't get answered. So what do you do if you're not answered? Strengthen yourself. Take courage. And then pray again. And hope in the Lord means prayer. Tanu Rabbanan Arba Tzrichin Chizuk Ve'elohen Torah Masim Tovim Tfilah V'derech Eretz. The Gemara says that there are 4 things that need to be strengthened. A person needs strengthening in Torah, and good deeds, and prayer, and proper conduct. But Derech Eretz here means occupation. A business, a livelihood. Torah Masim Tovim Minayin. How do we know that Torah and good deeds needs strengthening? Requires bolstering, as he translates here. As it is written, Rak chazak ve'ematz ma'od lishmor la'asot kachol ha'torah. Moses instructed Joshua, or perhaps it was God. Look in Joshua, first chapter. It says, "Only be strong and be extremely courageous. Observe and do all the Torah." So we see that why did Joshua need encouragement? Because it's something that needs encouragement. And he said, and he's talking about Torah. Be extremely courageous and observe and do all the Torah. He needed a pep talk. He needed to get psyched out for Torah. Chazak b'Torah ve'ematz v'masim tovim. So, why does the verse need to say chazak ve'ematz? Be strong and extremely courageous. Chazak, strong, ematz, extremely courageous. He could have said, be strong, one, and it would have referred to one. But it said both of them because it refers to both Torah and good deeds. Tefillah minayin shenemar kavei l'Hashem chazak v'matz libecha b'kavei l'Hashem. This verse, from where do we derive that prayer requires strengthening? One needs to be strongly encouraged. One needs to needs bolstering for prayer, because it says, hope in the Lord, strengthen yourself, let your heart take courage and hope in the Lord, and that's referring to prayer. From where is it derived that an occupation requires bolstering? As it is stated, be strong, and we will be strong for the sake of our nation and for the cities of our God. 2 Samuel, chapter 10. So this is referring to all of one's labors. V'tomar Tzion azavani Hashem shechachani. The Gemara cites a Midrash on the following verse in Isaiah that was just mentioned, relating to the sin of golden calf, and Moses' supplication for forgiveness. In this verse it says that, but Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, and the Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her suckling baby, etc.? But God is saying that just like you're like my sons. He says, who are the sons of God? The Jewish nation. And because we're as the sons of God, B'ni Bechor Yisrael, the firstborn of God is Israel. My firstborn Israel. It's like now God is comparing himself to a mother, not a father. So God, all these anthropomorphisms are so we can understand God, who has no form. Just for the way people understand things. And so a mother, any woman who is given birth, she knows that she can never forget her baby. Obviously. And God says, other people will forget, but I will never forget, the same way a mother would never forget her baby. So the Gemara asks the question. The verse says, "V'tomer Tzion azaveni Hashem v'Hashem shchecheni." God has forsaken me and God has forgotten me. So the Gemara says, forsaken is the same as forgotten. Why should it repeat the same idea twice? Amar Reish Lakish, Amra Knesset Yisrael lifnei Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam, Adam nosei isha al ishto rishona, zocher maaseh rishonim, ata azavtani v'shchachtani. Reish Lakish said, the community of Israel said before God, Master of the universe, even when a man marries a second wife after his first wife, he certainly recalls the deeds of his first wife. Yet you have not forgotten me. But you have not forgotten me, but you have forgotten me as well. You have not only forgotten me, but you have forgotten... sorry, I didn't read it right. You have not only... Zocher Maaseh Rishona, Ata Azavtani Ushchachtani. It's like if a man marries a second wife. After his first wife. A man was going to remember the deeds of his first wife. But with Israel is saying, it's not only that you've forsaken me, but you also forgotten me. It's like God forgot. Israel sinned, and God went to other nations after the sin of the golden calf. After back in ancient history, and it's so that the prophets always describe that Israel is God's first wife, and then Israel went whoring after other gods. So God went, meaning then God found another wife, so to speak. Israel is like the wife of God, right? So, and then afterwards, when Israel repented, the prophets describe how God went back to his first wife. So the Christians often use this as the fact that the temple was destroyed and the Jews were put into exile. The Christians in Christian history used to point and say, look, it's proof that we are now the chosen people and the chosen religion. As Jews, we know that that's nonsense, and the Gemara discusses this too. Because even in exile, God loves us. God still protected us in exile. Okay, so we weren't in our land. Because God has very higher expectations from us. So it doesn't mean that He forsaken us. We had a lot of Judaism is not a martyrology because there's also all of the joy and all of the brises and simchas and weddings and Shabboses, and so God is with us every step of the way, really. But externally He's forsaken us. But the proof positive that God has come back to Israel is that we're back in our land and we're doing mitzvot. So all of the claims of Christianity, you're exiled from your land, now the majority of Israel lives back in the state of Israel, in the borders of the land of Israel. Amar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Biti, 12 mazalot barati barakia v'al kol mazal barati lo 30 chayil v'al kol chayil barati lo 30 legion. The Holy One, blessed be, said, Israel, my daughter, I created 12 constellations in the firmament, and for each and every constellation I have created 30 armies, and for each army I have created 30 legions. V'al kol legion barati 30 rahaton, v'al kol rahaton barati lo 30 karton, v'al kol karton barati lo 30 gastra. And in each and every legion, I've created 30 infantry division leaders, Rahaton. And for each and every infantry division leaders, I've created 30 million camp leaders, Karton. And for each and every military camp leader, I've created 30 leaders of forts, it's a Gastra. And on each and every one of the leader of a fort, I hung 365,000 stars corresponding to the days of the solar year. And all of them I have created. על כל גסטר תליתי בו 365 אלפי ריבוע כוכבים כנגד ימות החמה, וכולן לא בראתי אלא בשבילך, ואת אמרת עזבתני ושכחתני. And all of them I have created only for your sake, Israel. And you say that the Lord has forsaken me and the Lord has forgotten me? It was all created for you, God says to Israel. What's the legion? It's the legio in Latin, legionis. It's the largest Roman army unit. Then there's rahaton. We're not sure where rahaton comes from. Some attribute it to the Greek word arithmos, which literally is translated as number, like arithmetic. So rahaton, arithmos, like arithmetic, meaning number, refers to a military unit there was a military unit of indeterminate size. It's just called a number, arithmos. The structure of the Roman army consists of armies which are divided into one or more legions and their auxiliary forces, etc. The Gemara's description of the heavenly host is influenced by the division of the large armies at the time when the Gemara was written. What about the constellations of the firmament? The list of the constellations and stars and their details is based also on the imagery of the Roman army. One must take into account, Rabbi Steinsaltz writes, that the specific order appears differently in different versions of the Talmud, and the meaning of various terms cannot be easily determined. The verse goes on to say, in Isaiah 49, Hatishkach isha ula, would a can a woman forget her suckling baby, that she would not have compassion for the child of her womb? Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Klum eshkach olot elim ufitre rachamim sheikravt lefanai b'midbar. Klum eshkach olot elim ufitre rachamim sheikravt lefanai b'midbar. Would I ever forget all of the offerings you made for me in the desert? Amra lefanav, Ribono shel olam, ho'il ve'en shechacha lifnei kisei kavodecha, shema lo tishkach li ma'aseh ego. So Israel said back to God, Master of the universe, we know that you don't forget anything. There's no forgetting before your throne of glory. So perhaps you also won't forget how we sinned with the golden calf. Amar la gam ele tishkachena. God responded to Israel, these, elu, also shall be forgotten. These is a reference to the golden calf. Just like it says, Ela Elohei Yisrael, these are your gods, golden calf, referring to the royal plural to this calf, this idol. It says Elu, Ela, these. It's comparing. It's a gezerah shava with the word Ela. It's comparing the two same words in different contexts. So it says Ele, gam Ele tishkachena. It says in the prophecy that these shall also be forgotten, and these is also a reference to the golden calf. So that's how we know that this verse has to do with the golden calf, because of the word. So amarti, the same word. Amarti lefanav Ribono shel olam, huel v'yeshicha lifnei kisei kavodecha, shema tishkach li maseh Sinai. Amar la v'anochi lo eshkachena. So the community of Israel said before God, Master of the universe, if you're saying these you will also forget, perhaps you're going to forget how we stood and received your Torah at Har Sinai, how we accepted the Torah. You're going to forget that we accepted the Torah? There's another verse that says, God answered back, says, Va'anochi lo eshkachena, and I will not forget. How do you know that Anochi lo eshkachena is talking about the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai? Because at Har Sinai, God said the very first word in the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Not saying Ani, but Anochi, this special word for I. And it's also, so God, why did Dafka he say Anochi lo eshkachena? Tishkachena? Sorry, Ani lo eshkachech. Va'anochi lo eshkachech. He could have said Vani lo eshkachech. No, it says Va'anochi lo eshkachech. It uses the word Anochi, which is I will not forget it, using the I that was said at the giving of the Torah at Sinai. Dainu da Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Oshaya, my diktiv, gam ele tishkachena, ze maaseh egel, v'anochi lo eshkachech, ze maaseh Sinai. This is what Rabbi Elazar said that Rabbi Oshaya said. What is the meaning of that which is written, and these two will not be forgotten? That's the sin of the golden calf, Ela. And what is the meaning of v'anochi lo eshkachech? These are the events that transpired at Sinai. It says the same thing over again. Chasidim Rishonim Ayu Mashayin. We learned in the Mishnah that the early generation of pious men would wait 1 hour in preparation to get ready to daven and pray. Manalan Mili? Where do we derive this from the Torah? Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi Amar Kra. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, the verse says, Ashrei Yoshvei V'techa. Fortunate are those who dwell in your house. And then immediately after it says, they will praise you. So dwelling in your house meaning waiting, preparing. Yoshvei, sitting down, getting ready. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi Amit Palal Tzarich Lishahot Sha'a Achat Achar Tfilato Shneamar Ach Tzadikim Yodu Lishmecha Yeshu Yisharim Penecha. He says somebody who davens has to wait an hour after he prays to prepare. You prepare yourself for an hour, and after you pray, you come down from your prayer slowly for an hour. An hour does not mean actually 60 minutes here. It could be a half an hour. It could be 10 minutes. For most people these days, I suppose it's about 10 seconds. But it's a good practice to take a little time after you daven. Maybe learn a bit, learn a Mishnah, If you're a chassid, you can dance, make a circle dance, whatever. Just take all that power from tefillah and put it somewhere. Don't just go out, do business, or just rush home or jump into the street. And it could be perhaps dangerous. So if one truly prayed, then it would be impossible to simply switch right away. So how do we know we have to pray, wait an hour after we pray? It says in the verse, Psalm 140, surely the righteous will give thanks unto your name, and the upright will sit before you. Meaning that after thanking God through prayer, one should stay and sit before Him and wait. Tanya nami hachi amit polal sarich shehei sha'achat kodem tfilato v'sha'achat achar tfilato. That opinion was also taught in the Braita. One who prays should wait an hour before praying and then wait an hour after praying. Kodem tfilato minayin. From where do we derive that you wait an hour before you pray? Shenamar ashur shebetecha. Like we said. The Braita repeats what was just said. The sages taught a Braita that the early generation of pious men wait 1 hour, pray 1 hour, and then wait 1 hour again. So this raises the question. So if you're praying 3 times a day, you're waiting, preparing yourself for a whole hour to pray, then you're praying for a whole hour, and then you're coming down from your prayer, leaving your prayer for a whole hour. After you pray, you wait in respect. And then, okay, that's 3 hours, 3 times 3, 9 hours. So the Talmud asks, when is he going to have time to learn Torah, and when is he going to have time to make a living and work? There's only 24 hours in the day, and a person has to sleep. The Gemara answers, rather, they were pious men, so they merited that their Torah is preserved. Because the Gemara asked, not where are you going to learn, how are you going to preserve your Torah? Meaning, back then they would repeat. They would learn by heart, and they would repeat what they knew by heart. So if you don't repeat what you know by heart, you forget, God forbid. So that repetition was an ancient practice which is still done today. And learning by memory. Some people still do it, actually. But in other words, like this Daf Yomi, we're reading it over and over again so we don't forget it. Not just, or to learning for the sake of heaven, to understand and to know the Torah and to follow the Torah and out of the love of God. But we're also learning simply also not to forget. So and that's like to preserve it. So, but the Hasidim, if they spend a lot of time, the Hasidim Rishonim, because they daven so earnestly and so true prayer, nullifying themselves before God, that in the merit of this self-nullification, that they didn't forget what they learned, and they didn't have to spend time repeating and reviewing what they learned. The Mishnah said that even if you're standing in prayer in the Amidah and the king comes and says, "How are you?" greets you, you don't answer the king. Amar Rav Yosef, lo shenu ela lemalchi Yisrael, ela malchi umot olam posek. Rav Yosef said this is referring to a non-Jewish king. Sorry, a Jewish king. This is referring to Jewish king. If the Jewish king doesn't, perhaps you're praying and it's not very obvious that you're praying, and he comes and says hello to you, you don't have to answer a Jewish king. If the Messiah comes to you and you're standing Amida, says, "How are you?" you don't turn away from God and say, "Good day, Your Majesty." No. It's more important to pray the Amida. And the Messiah will understand that. He'll go, "Oh, It's hard to believe that the Messiah is the normal person who could make a mistake and not realize somebody's praying. He says, "Verichu be'yorat Hashem," and I'll be able to see each and every person and all the prophecies. So how would he not know? How can that be the whatever? So maybe he was a king of Israel and not a king of Judah, who weren't on the same level. But if it's a non-Jewish king, and you're standing in prayer, and the non-Jewish king says, "How are you, sir?" You do stop your Amida prayer, and you honor the non-Jewish king, for various reasons. Halakha says, one who is in the midst of the Amida prayer should not interrupt his prayer to show deference to anyone, even to a king of Israel. If it's a non-Jewish king, or a violent person, if a thug comes up to you in the middle of the Amida, says, "How's it going?" and you know he's a violent person, or you even sense it, you do stop and say, "Okay, fine." Or, if it's at all possible, it's preferable to move out of the way or to abbreviate one's prayer. Meitzvei hamitpalel v'ra'a anas ba kenegdo ra'a karon ba kenegdo lo yeh mafsik ela mekatzer v'olei. The Gemara raises an objection to Rav Yosef's opinion. He says one who is praying saw a violent person feared by all coming towards him, or a carriage coming towards him. He's in the way, he means about to get hit by a car. He should abridge his prayer. If you're about to get hit by a car, you don't abridge your prayer, you just jump out of the way. But if it's far enough distance away, and you say, "Thank you, God," and you walk away. If it's safe, you live. In other words, we live by Chai Behem Katuv. You live by the mitzvah. You don't die by them. You abridge one prayer so you can pray many more prayers, right? But if he's not in a situation where he can abridge his prayer, the car's coming at him, and he has to get out of the way, so he just stops and gets out of the way. The Gemara itself says it. Efshar likatzer, yikatzer. V'imla posek. If it's possible to abbreviate, and if it's not possible, you stop. Tanu Rabbanan Maaseh b'chasid echad sh'aya mitpalel b'derech. Ba hegmon echad v'natan lo shalom v'lo yachzir lo shalom. Himtim lo ad shesiyam tfilato. Lachar shesiyam tfilato amar lo reka. V'halo katuv b'toratchem rak ki shomer lecha u'shmor nafshecha. V'kativ nishmartem od nafshetechem. Kashenatati lecha shalom lama lo hechzarta li shalom. Im hayta chotech roshcha b'sayif. Mi hayat tovea et damcha miadi. There was once a story about a pious man who was praying while traveling along the path, and a hegmon, an officer, came to him and greeted him. The pious man did not pause from his prayer and didn't respond to the hegmon with the greeting. So the officer waited, he didn't return and say hi. He just kept praying, so the officer waited for him to finish. After he finished his prayer, the officer said to him, "You're good for nothing. You endangered yourself. I could have killed you. Isn't it written in your Torah, take utmost care and guard yourself diligently? And isn't it also written, take therefore good heed unto yourselves?" The officers, the Roman officers, apparently knew the Bible pretty well back then. They could quote the Bible in Hebrew. Most Jews these days can't quote the Bible in Hebrew. I couldn't have whipped out those two psukim. And so this is a little musar for me and everyone else, that the Roman officers in the ancient days are putting us to shame. So anyhow, with their knowledge of psukim. So when the officer said to the Jew, "When I greeted you, why didn't you respond? Were I to sever your head with a sword, who would hold me accountable for your blood? I would go to get off scot-free." Amar lo, hemten li ad she'afayescha b'dvarim. The pious man said, "Please wait to you and allow me to appease you with words." Ilu hayta omed b'fnei melech basar v'dam uva chavercha v'natan lecha shalom. Hayta machzir lo. If you, Hegmon, sir, were standing before a king, and a friend of yours came and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Would you turn away from the king and say, "Hey, not bad, pretty good"? No. You're standing before the king. Amar lo, hayu chotchim et roshcha b'sayf. Ma hayu osim lecha. What would they have done to you if you had turned away from the king and started chatting with your friends? He said, the king would come and cut my head off. Amar lo, v'halo dvarim kal v'chomer. Said, isn't it an a fortiori inference? He could say a fortiori to the hegemon because the hegemon understood Latin. Unlike today, nobody knows what a fortiori means. It means all the more so. If A is true, then B is all the more so true. A logical inference. So, it's a fortiori. Kal v'chomer. Ma ata shahita omed lifnei melech basar v'dam sheyom kan mechar bekever. If you're standing before a king, a living human king, God is the living God, but the king, but we're talking about an earthly king, and he's here today and tomorrow he's in the grave, and still you would not have dared to turn away from him. Kach אני שהייתי עומד לפני מלך מלכי מלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא חי וקיים לעד ולעולמי עולמים, על אחד כמה וכמה. I was standing before the Holy One, blessed be He, the King of Kings, who lives and endures for all eternity, forever and ever. מיד נתפייס אותו הגמון, ונפטר איתו חסי, אותו לביתו לשלום. Immediately, the officer was appeased, and the pious man returned home in peace. And may you go in peace also.